Today, let's talk about building an elevator pitch. This is something every agent should have, but hardly any of them do. So what is an elevator pitch, you might ask? It's 15 to 20 seconds of about you. It's if somebody asks you, hey, Micah, what do you do? You'll have something to answer with. If you don't have the answer, then you might not ever talk about your business or what you do. And as a real estate agent, that's a huge missed opportunity. Most of us say similar things when people ask us what we do or what our job is, but how many of us have actually taken the time to write out an answer? The reason I ask is if we write out an answer, then we don't miss anything. We know exactly what we're going to tell someone. We know exactly what points we want to hit on. For instance, what if they're interested in buying or selling? Do we know any of that? We need to find out. But if we're caught off guard or we're in the moment, we may just forget to ask. We may forget to talk at all about our business. And as real estate agents, we are on all the time. We are our brand. So we have to be ready for these questions when they come up. The worst is when you walk away from a conversation wishing you would have said something more or something different. That's why we want to have an elevator pitch ready, so we never feel like that. Because let's be honest, you only get one opportunity to make a good first impression, so make it count. I actually have two different versions of an elevator pitch. One for when I'm introduced to someone new, so someone I've never met before, someone introduces me to them. And number two, I have an elevator pitch ready if someone asks me about the market. Because I'm a real estate agent, so I'm hoping that they're going to ask me about the market. I want to be honest, when I'm talking about an elevator pitch, a lot of people, they just throw up information about themselves. Well, the truth is nobody really wants to hear that. I would much rather engage the other person in what I'm trying to say. If it's a new person, I've never met this person before, one of the first things I'm going to try to do is ask them what they do for a living. Why? Because then they feel obligated to ask me what I do for a living. And then that starts the whole conversation. So in my elevator pitch, when I'm introduced to new people, now obviously I give them my name and I tell them a little bit about myself. Now you can either go into your profession and what you do for a living, or you can ask them. So I'd say, hi, I'm Micah Pearson. They'd say, hi, I'm so-and-so. What do you do for a living? Oh, I sell balloons at the fair. Oh, that's fantastic. And then they're going to ask me, what do you do for a living? I'm a real estate agent. That's exactly how we want to start that off, because then that's going to open up additional conversation. The additional conversation is probably going to be, well, how's the market? Or how do you like it? Or how long have you been doing it? All of these things can lead back to a general synopsis of what's happening in the real estate market. From that general synopsis of the real estate market, I'm going to ask them if they've ever thought about buying or selling real estate. Now, this is something that we have to get good at. This isn't something that we usually just start out being great at asking people these questions, especially when we just met them. But that's something as a real estate agent, like I said, you are your brand. You're a human billboard. You have to always be asking these questions and starting these conversations. You never know what they're thinking. They may have just had a conversation with their spouse the other day about buying a house or selling their current house. You never know. So we've got to have these conversations. Some people prefer an elevator pitch that talks a little bit more about themselves. For me, I'm not really into talking about myself. I'd much rather engage and talk about them. That's why I like to ask questions. So once you ask them, have they ever thought about buying or selling real estate, that opens up a whole new avenue of conversation that could go anywhere. Be prepared to just have a conversation, because at the end of the day, you don't have to sell yourself. That's not the purpose of this conversation. But you want to get it out there and plant some seeds, because you never know when they're going to call on you. Okay, so let's talk about if we come across somebody that we know and they ask us about the market. Now, we don't need to do an introduction. They already know who I am. So I'm not going to waste their time explaining to them who I am. But what I am going to do is I'm going to say the market is great. Because you know what? The market's always great. That's what we have to remember, is no matter what's happening in the market, people need to buy and sell real estate. The market's great for some and it's not good for others. Just like the last 2 years, everybody all of a sudden is touting that this market was so amazing, but it was great for some and it was terrible for others. That's always the way the market is. So I'm going to ask them why they're asking, because I want to know, is it great for them or is it terrible for them? We need to find out one way or another. So I'm going to say, are you asking because you've thought about buying or selling, or are you just interested in what's happening in the market? This is the part where you have to prepare a little bit more, because we want to make sure that we're leaning towards whatever they're looking for. So if they say, well, I've been kind of interested in buying a rental property or a new property for myself, then we would want to have stats available that will speak to what they're looking for in real estate. If we have stats that are explaining how many properties are on the market right now for sale, or what interest rates are right now, or where the experts think appreciation might be going, Any of these things are great to have in your bullet points because we want to be able to just have that conversation easily and free flowing. We don't want to have to think about it, and we certainly don't want to walk away from the conversation saying, oh, I wish I would have talked about interest rates. So an example might be there are actually 860 homes available for sale right now. That's 10% more homes than were available the same time last year. So it's giving buyers more opportunities to buy in this market. Not to mention, sellers are more willing to negotiate right now. So we've actually had buyer clients who are getting their closing costs paid, or even the sellers buying down their interest rate. There are a lot of great options right now for buyers. Okay, so those are some great examples for if they said they were interested in buying. But what if they were interested in selling? So an example, over 1,400 homes sold last month alone, and that was 10% more than the month before. That was also 9% more than that same month the previous year. Homes are selling as long as you have an aggressive marketing strategy and you're putting time into staging and pricing. That statement is not necessarily going to sell them on the fact that they need to sell their house right now. What it's going to do is it's going to plant seeds. It's going to give them something so that they can think about it. Maybe it is a good time to sell. You know, if I could sell for pretty close to what I thought I could get, but I could buy at some outstanding opportunity because someone else wants to sell worse than I do, that might be a good opportunity. If we don't ever have these conversations, they may never start having that dialogue in their head. So what if they say they're just curious? Well, I'm going to start by focusing on one side or the other. If they own a home, I'm going to start focusing on the seller's side. I'm going to tell them all the reasons why selling is still an option. If they don't own a home, then I'm going to focus more on a buyer elevator pitch. Make sure that they know all the reasons that they could buy a house if they wanted to. One thing I would always ask is if they say, oh, we were just kind of interested in what's happening in the market, I'd say, do you own the home you live in now or are you renting? I want to know which way to go. If they own their home, I'm going to go towards the seller example. I want to get into why it's a great time to sell their home. Whether they're thinking about it or not, we want them to know this information. Now, if they're renting, we want to be talking about buying. Let's talk about getting them into a home of their own where they get to make their own decisions and they're not worried about rent going up or a landlord telling them what they can and can't do. We want them to know that there's opportunities, and everything they're hearing in the news doesn't necessarily mean it's written in stone. Now, the last piece I want to bring up in regards to an elevator pitch is the follow-up. I'm telling you, you guys have heard me say it before, the money is in the follow-up, and it's the same thing with a conversation like this. If we've had a chance to get into our elevator pitch, if we've had a chance to talk to someone about the real estate market, we need to follow up. We've got to check in. We've got to make sure they don't have any other questions. Every time I talk to somebody about real estate, I make sure I follow up with them within a week. When I follow up, I want to make sure I have something of value. So my script would go something like this. Hey, I just wanted to check in. We talked last week and we talked about the real estate market. I just wanted to send you this article I found on what's happening in the real estate market now and how that's affecting buying and selling. Let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything else I can do for you. Something simple like that, just to get in front of them, just to remind them about the conversation, just to make sure that they know that you care enough to reach out again, will go a long way. But it also helps with all those seeds that we planted, reminding them that, hey, they've got a lot to think about. So if they're going to make a move, invite them to sit down. Let's talk about selling or buying. Let's get all of your questions answered and see what's on the market. If they were just looking, follow up, make sure they don't have any additional questions. Let them know that you're always available if they have any questions or concerns, and you would love referrals. If they knew anybody looking to buy or sell, you'd be happy to talk to them, answer any questions, anything you can do to help. The key is to always follow up quickly and professionally because you never know what that first conversation sparked. It might have sparked a whole different dialogue inside of their head than what they talked to you about at the party or the gathering or wherever you were. So if you don't follow up, they may be thinking one thing, you're thinking an entirely different thing, and you may never connect again. Following up just helps plant your relationship so that you know that they have all the answers they need, they know how to find you, and hopefully you end up doing business together.